Good evening, Alan Rule here. Thank you for tuning in. I am live with Amanda Farnum here, and yeah, we're going to have a good discussion. Amanda is a Catholic, a wife, a mom, and she is the author of an article at Crisis Magazine that came out a couple weeks back called "A Mass Worth Sacrificing For."
Mhm.
And Amanda, thanks for agreeing to come on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So the question I ask all of my new guests is, how did you come to know the Lord Jesus Christ and end up in the church you're in? In this case, the Catholic Church, obviously.
Okay. Well, I grew up Catholic. I'm a cradle Catholic. And I always had this knowledge or this understanding that our faith was very important. I remember when I was 8, uh, there was something I had to do. I was in 4th grade at the time. I had to draw this little thing. And one of the things was, what's the most important thing that you've done? And even at 8, I knew giving my life to Jesus was what I put. I knew that was the most important thing I could do. And so I came from a very faithful home. We went to church every Sunday, even when we traveled, and it was more of like more charismatic leaning, you know. Um, I was an altar server uh, since I was 8, and through high school I altar served, and we had life teen at my parish, so it was a more charismatic Catholic experience. And when I was in high school, I wanted to become a youth minister, and so I went on to college and got a degree in theology. I didn't realize, though, that not all Catholic universities are the same or equal.
That's
So I didn't choose the best Catholic university I could have, but I didn't know that at the time. And I went on to become a youth minister, middle school youth minister, and I only lasted about a year because it didn't take me long to realize that it really doesn't matter what I do for an hour once a week with these kids.
mm,
What matters more is what goes on in the home. And I quickly realized too that if I'm away nights and weekends working with kids, when I have children, who's with my kids, right? Um, so I quickly realized that it wasn't a family friendly, career or anything like that, and I realized that it really couldn't do much unless what was going on in the home was good. And so I got married soon after college, and to my husband Daniel, and we got married in the church. I mean, it's a really rather boring life or a Catholic, testimony. I would say I probably strayed a little bit in the college time frame after college. It probably wasn't as faithful as I could have been, but motherhood sets things back on track, or it did for me, when I became a mom in 2009, and kind of had another deepening of my faith when I became a mom and realized that I have to cultivate this faith life in my children. And so what does that look like? More is caught than taught. So if I'm not doing it, my children won't be doing it. And so started uh, looking into like living the liturgy and what does it look like to be a Catholic home, um, when I became a mom with young children. And that's pretty much the gist of it. The faith has always been a big part of my life. Um,
okay. If you don't mind sharing, what again, if it's personal, you don't need to. But what university do you go to or college?
it's St. Edward's University in Austin.
Oh, okay.
It's the
Okay.
sister school of Notre Dame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read E. Michael Jones's book about Notre Dame. I don't know if you've read that one.
Yeah, I
But
could tell you some stories about St. Ed's, but that's another podcast.
that's another podcast. Well,
Yeah.
okay, and you talked about being kind of charismatic growing up, and like, did that continue after you were married, or because eventually you find the Latin Mass, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, my husband and I helped with youth group when we first got married. Um, we would do retreats and things like that. It my husband's actually a convert from Protestantism, so he converted before we met. So, but I wouldn't say, I don't know that the charismatic thing. While it was enough to get us in the faith, I went to some Steubenville conferences and stuff. It wasn't really our style
Hmm.
of, it's not something that we really took to. But when we had young children, I was just trying to find, things that would awaken their faith. And so we went to a couple parishes. We had moved away from our hometown where we met to Alabama, and that's where we became, young parents. And then we didn't find the Latin Mass until we left Alabama about the 2018-19 timeframe.
Okay, and how did you manage to come across a Latin Mass? Like a friend told you, or?
Yeah, because I remember when I was in high school, we had to go to a Latin Mass for confirmation. But like, I think it was probably a low Mass, because I just remember it being very quiet. And I don't even remember very much about it. And, I just assumed it was the Mass in Latin. And I never really thought much about it ever again. I would say 2017, we moved back home to Austin, and we had just experienced some trials and hardships in our marriage. And so we moved back to Austin, and we're trying to find a church home in the area. And we just couldn't ever really get settled. Nothing, it just, I don't know. We were wanting this deepening of our faith. We were having a renewal and an awakening together in our marriage in the faith. And so we couldn't find a church home. And so about 2018, the summer of shame, when all the McCarrick stuff broke, that was very unnerving.
Letter, yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in. And so, Taylor Marshall was a voice that I had trusted for many years before he was Taylor Marshall. And so I know that he was talking about all of those things, and I, and then he started talking about tradition and Latin Mass and all that kind of stuff. And so, and it was kind of refreshing to hear him talk, because he was saying things that I had always thought, but I didn't know I had permission to think them, And so it was like, wow, I'm not the only one who thinks these things about how the Mass is, and how it just, something about it was always, I don't know, it just didn't seem right. And so, he piqued my interest. And so I started researching and learning more about the Mass and what happened and all those kinds of things. And we would go occasionally, and some friends of ours, two other couples with us, who are close friends of ours, they were also, looking into it and kind of curious. It was very difficult to commit to going, though. We liked it okay. I don't think by the time we were going, I was convicted. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to commit to this, no matter what it takes. But my husband was like, I don't know. It's far. It's downtown. There's, it's a rough part of town. Like, it's long. We have small children. It's during nap time. Like, all these obstacles. And I was like, I know, but maybe we can make it work. And isn't it worth it? And all those kinds of things. I was tired of leaving Mass angry, quite honestly. There were so many things about the Mass that we were starting to realize and awaken to, that made it very difficult to go to Mass. The lack of reverence was just really difficult. My husband had even reached out to our pastor at the time and said, hey, the clapping after Mass for the choir, could we maybe not?
Yeah.
And then, he also said, could you offer us a place to kneel to receive communion? All the different things that make a Mass more reverent. He had kind of said, could we meet and discuss it? And he didn't say no, but he said that the time my husband could meet was not something he could do. And then the conversation just kind of died. Because my husband's mentality was like, well, we can help our parish. Like, we'll bring tradition to the parish, right? We'll bring the reverence with us, and we'll be a good example, and we'll just try and grow where we're planted kind of mentality. And I was like, I don't know. So finally I don't know what made us finally bite the bullet and just commit. but we did the spring, March 2020, right before COVID, and we did, and we never looked back, and it was one of the greatest blessings of our marriage and of our life so far. And so we committed, and the community was just so welcoming. I'd never experienced a Catholic community that was that welcoming. And, we would gather after Mass and visit, and our kids would play and go to dinner out together afterwards, and it was just a really beautiful experience. And finally, I found peace at Mass. I wasn't leaving Mass angry because, some sort of irreverence was taking place. And just to give you an example, at the parish that we were going to at the time, God bless him, I'm sure he had the best of intentions of trying to be welcoming, but there was this usher that would continue the sign of peace through the entirety of communion. He would literally, as people were coming out of the pew, he would shake their hand and say, "Peace be with you, peace be with you." I mean, it was a giant parish. There were hundreds of people at every Mass. And so we were just like, we're at the foot of Calvary, and you're just glad handing everybody. And I'm sure he had the best of intentions and was just trying to be a welcoming, friendly face, but we just couldn't get over how misplaced the timing was. We're at Calvary, we're going to receive communion, and it just seems kind of misplaced.
Yeah, that does seem unfortunate. So at this time, you're searching for a more reverent parish. There's the Latin Mass. Do you consider any was there an Anglican ordinariate? Was there an Eastern Rite or anything like that?
We don't have an Anglican ordinariate in the area. Although I think now, 5 years later, they're starting one here, but it meets at a chapel somewhere at a Catholic high school. And then I think there's a Marianite church that is in town. We never gave that a try. Delivery. I'm sorry. There's no. I'm sorry. No. Thank you. So there's a Marianite church, but we never attended that, and I don't think that there's any Eastern Rite options here. There might be one, but I'm not sure that it consistently meets. I'm not sure.
Yeah, like my mom's Eastern Rite, and my dad's Protestant, and I grew up Catholic, but my mom tried to tried to raise us in the Roman Rite, but occasionally we'd go to Eastern Rite, so I kind of grew up in both, and I always noticed the difference. Though I could never understand the Ukrainian, but
yeah. Well, and we're not Eastern, so it didn't seem like it wasn't a natural thing to seek out. We're Roman, we're Roman Catholic, so.
Okay. And what was the biggest shock when coming from the Latin Mass from your old parish?
Well, actually, the biggest shock wasn't going from one to the Latin Mass. It was going back to the Novus Ordo. That was the most shocking thing. Because once you do the Latin Mass for a time and you go back to the Novus Ordo, it seems like a different world. It's very startling to go back to it. Yeah, so it's very, because once you find the peace of the Latin Mass, and I love it because it kind of reminds me of going to adoration and the peace that you find in going to adoration.
Yeah.
You go back to the Novus Ordo and you realize how loud it is and how active it is and how there's no time to pray. In the Novus Ordo, because you're constantly doing something, you're constantly answering, saying the prayers, or singing a song, or doing something. And so in the Latin Mass, there's just the time and space to pray. Yes, Father Don, Monsignor Don I met him before, and he gave us a wonderful tour of Our Lady of Maronites. It's a beautiful church. He had a lot of really nice things to say.
Oh, wonderful. So you guys ended up in the Latin Mass. So this is about 2018, you said?
2018, 2020 was, because 2018 to 2019, we'd go once a month or when we could. occasionally,
Yeah,
but
because it was
not
quite a drive, right?
right, because it was a lot to commit to. We had a young baby at the time, and so it was hard. There were a lot of obstacles. And finally in 2020, we were tired of not being settled because we still couldn't find a parish that felt at home, that felt like home, or felt like what we were looking for. And so we finally
To
just
call your
decided to
family,
commit.
yeah.
March 2020, and then the lockdowns happened, and that
Yeah,
was
that's
super
yeah.
weird. And the world changed, but we knew instantly that it was the right decision. We had a lot of confirmation that it was the right decision, um, to commit fully to the TLM at the time.
And so how did COVID affect your TLM parish?
It actually affected it positively because of the number of people that attended it and the social distancing requirements and everything like that. It actually gave us another mass. So we had only the 3:30 mass, which was always standing room only. And then around the COVID time, we needed more space. We just couldn't social distance. It just was impossible. And so they gave us the 7:30 in the morning, an additional time.
Okay, and you start going to the 7:30 one?
Well, we would occasionally go if we could. With babies, it's hard. But if,
Yeah.
for some reason we had to go to the 7:30, we would go. Um, but our main mass, we really went to the 3:30. That's the high mass. So
Yeah. Yeah, like
yeah.
for like in our church, the high mass is at 12:30. The low mass is quarter after 7 in the morning. I go to that one. But
Hmm.
and in between at 9 and 11, there's the Novus Ordo because that's the prime
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
But okay, so the so you keep going during COVID. That
Hmm.
starts in 2020, keeps going on, and not long after that, we get this wonderful document from Rome
Yeah.
called Traditionis Custodes.
Yep.
And what was the climate in your because it seemed like that argument that document was so poorly written. It was
Mhm.
ambiguous. You couldn't make heads or tails of a lot of it. Some stuff was clear, but w- like like I remember we didn't know what to make of it.
Right. It was shocking. It was sad. We were devastated and then it was like, okay, now what? Because nothing changed and nobody talked about it. And I think the bishop released a letter, I think, that said we're going to continue on as we are now and we're going to look into it, basically. Uh, that was basically what all we heard, our community. And then just like nobody really talked about it. And so it was kind of like the elephant in the room that nobody acknowledged or talked about. I mean, we as the laity would visit about it, but um, the priests didn't seem to really want to discuss it. Bringing it up was kind of awkward, and we certainly didn't hear from our bishop about it. So it was kind of disappointing in that, like, this huge bomb just went off. Could we discuss it, or what does this mean for us? We had no, we kind of just, for the next couple of years, we just kind of held our breath every time we went to mass. Is this the Sunday we get axed? We just didn't know.
Oh
And
man.
it was frustrating because we saw a lot of transparency in some other dioceses, from other bishops. They were like, we know, we're going to take care of you. They either providing consolation that they would be taken care of, or, they're going to, or, we'll make accommodations or move or whatever, but we just didn't hear anything. And so that was disappointing because, you kind of want to make plans. We have plans to make. We've got families to raise. What do we need to do? What do you know? Because once you start down this road, it's really hard to go back. I mean, we know too much now, right? So
We're red pilled, yeah,
yeah,
as they like to
it's really
say.
hard, and we never want to be without this liturgy for our children. So
Okay, so that document comes, and then like it's kind of like wondering what's going to happen. But believe it or not, and you know this too, that document didn't close a whole lot of Latin masses. Like the vast
no,
majority of
yeah.
people I knew who were going to Latin mass, I think everyone actually
Yeah.
were still going to Latin Mass a year later, because I think most bishops don't have a problem. Like, even if they're a bit of a centrist or whatever, don't have a problem with having one Latin Mass in the diocese
Yeah.
for those who want to attend it.
Yeah.
And so, like, this document was a monumental failure,
Yeah. And a lot of bishops were invoking Canon 87, I think it is, where, that they can dispense of something like that if they see that their local parish needs something different. So,
and then, yeah, because that document, over and over again, it's like, it's up to the bishop, up to the bishop, up to the bishop, like, over, they just
yeah.
drummed this into your head. The only thing you needed to go to Rome for was approval of a priest ordained after the document. You
Yeah.
needed approval from Rome. I don't know why, but you needed
Yeah.
approval from. And so, if you think about it, my friend Timothy Flanders has
Hmm.
pointed out that that document was a monumental failure. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't work, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in early 2023, Cardinal Roche did his rescript and basically said, "Okay, forget the local bishop. Now you need to check your Latin Mass with Rome."
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's what your parish did.
Yeah. We didn't know that they had written off to Rome for permission to continue. But I guess that's what they did. And so I guess that's when the clock started. You have 2 years. I guess they gave them a 2-year extension, at which time they would have to close things down. So when the rescript came out, again, that was another, like, okay, now what, that nobody talked about. Um, so we kind of just didn't know what to make of it. I know that every time I went to Mass, it was always in the back of my mind, maybe this is the Sunday we get shut down. And so when it finally happened, eh, um, when was it? It was February 11th, I think. Our Lady of Lourdes. I think that was when it happened. It happened. We got, texts started coming in mid-morning after Mass. And I remember the night before, something in me just was like, ugh. I just kind of, something ominous hit me about, I was like, I don't know. I think it's coming soon. And then, so when it happened the next day, I was like, wow, I was right. Here it is.
Yeah, because I got fairly concerned with Cardinal Roche's rescript, because then after that, the Latin Mass have started closing, and they've continued closing since. It's not like Traditionis Custodes. It's like 3 or 4 months you'd hear about one parish that would close, but the people there would still have access to another one and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's basically, this rescript is succeeding where Traditionis Custodes failed, and
Yeah.
like
And I don't know why. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to believe that something that produces the fruit that it does would be targeted by our bishops, because I've been Catholic all my life, and I have, the fruit that we have experienced from this liturgy in the last 4 years is not comparable, to anything that I've experienced before. And I can't explain it. I don't know why it is, but I definitely have lived lex orende, lex credende, lex vivendi. As we worship, so we believe, so we live. And something happens with this liturgy that awakens in you uh, this desire to the desire to holiness, and so and things are just rightly ordered somehow through this liturgy. And I don't know how. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but I experienced it firsthand. I lived it. And I just know that it happens. And so I want to keep this liturgy in our life. And so we're pretty committed to doing that.
So as of right now, like, you talked about how they contacted your parish in February, like that's like February last month, right?
Yes.
like not 2023. Okay, good. And
No, this year. Yeah, this
yeah,
month or last month.
yeah, and they stopped them in at the beginning of March, right?
Well, no, actually, yesterday was the last Sunday mass, and it was very well attended. The 3:30 mass, I think, had 535 people. I think they said that is a lot of people. I don't think that was standing room only, so it was packed, and we weren't able to be there because we're traveling. But the last Latin Mass will be this Tuesday. Our Latin Mass Society is named for Saint Joseph. It's the Saint Joseph Latin Mass Society, and so to honor our patron Saint Joseph, they're allowing us to have the mass on his feast day. So that will be the last mass at the cathedral.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
and
then
it's been at the cathedral since 2007. Bishop Amen brought it there. So
okay, and so now there's no Latin Mass in your diocese now.
well, actually, there are three. There are three that fall within the parameters of Traditionis Custodes, right? So, like, one I think is at a convent, the other is at a student center, and the other is in a parish hall. But they're all, not very close. This location was central in Austin, and so a lot of people from all over town could get to it. Um, but now the three that are available are all on the perimeters of town, and so this the mass that we'll be attending is an hour from us, so that hour without traffic. And so hopefully on a Sunday we can get there. I don't know what that looks like on holy days, but holy days of obligation, but right, we're going to try to make the effort to go to the other locations. We don't know if those are safe locations, or if maybe they got a 2-year extension for those locations. I'm not sure. There isn't really a lot of transparency in our diocese on this. um, you know so I don't know, we'll see.
What are most of your friends at church going to do? Have they told you?
Yeah, we're all going to try and go to the other locations. We're all very committed. I think there's a few people that will stay at the cathedral. So what they did with the 2 mass times at the cathedral is that they will do the ordinary form, but they will do it ad orientem, Latin, and with Gregorian chant, and they will have the communion kneelers available for anyone who wants to receive kneeling on the tongue, which is great. And that's exactly what we were asking for 5 years ago, right? Had they given more people those things 5 years ago, which I think a lot of people were asking for this kind of thing 5 years ago, we probably would have been happy and not ever found the Latin Mass. So it's ironic. 5 years later, we're getting what we asked for, and yet we found the Latin Mass, and so we know that it's not comparable to the Latin Mass, and so we're pretty committed to that.
I want to read an excerpt from your article at Crisis Magazine. Again, I've put the link in the bottom for anyone who wants to check it out. Well, it was initially very difficult to overcome and accept all these obstacles and attend Mass here. After a short time, it was no burden at all. We looked at our weekly trip to Mass as a pilgrimage, a small penance to take on. It changed our Sundays completely, and for the first time, we understood what it meant to keep holy the Sabbath. Our entire Sunday became oriented toward the most important thing we do all week, the holy sacrifice of the Mass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the part that touched me the most.
Yeah.
Um, y-
Our Sundays just radically changed. They got more peaceful and more. We, finally understood what it meant to keep holy the Sabbath. Exactly. Don't work on Sundays, go to Mass, all those kind of things. And so it was very transformative for our Sundays, were those liturgies. And they became wonderful blessings for us. And it was, yeah, we were happy to do it. We were happy to make sacrifices to preserve this beautiful liturgy.
wow, amen. That's powerful. Like I told you this before the live stream, but um, I told you that in the summer I was at my friend's barbecue. He lives an hour north of the city here, and there was a guy I talked to there from 3 hours away from Calgary, from Medicine Hat. Type it into Google Maps, and you can see how far it is. 3 hour drive both ways, like 3 hours here, 3 hours there. 10 kids, and I've heard he has
Wow.
another on the way.
Yeah.
They take 2 huge vans, and they make the trek for the 12:30 mass in my city.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
So
It's definitely worth it. That's impressive.
I wonder what Pope Francis would say to a family like that.
I
Because
know.
no
And
doubt, yeah, go ahead.
well, I just can't imagine, like, if I'm a bishop or a leader of an organization and there's a group of people who are doing these types of things, I want to know why. What is it? What is their conviction about this mass? Like, because I don't think they understand our conviction about it. And Pope Francis, he was ordained in 1969. And so, and that's right when we switched over to the Novus Ordo. And so he, as a priest, never celebrated the traditional rite or the traditional Latin Mass. And so he has I'm sure he grew up in it. He was an altar boy in it. So he has some awareness of it. But as a priest, it's really been a very long time since he has experienced that. And so I don't know, if I were a bishop or a leader of an organization, and a group of people were like driving hours to do something and radically being transformed by something, I would want to know why. I would want to know, what is it? I would want to read the books that they're reading. I would want to hear the talks that they're listening to. What is it about this liturgy that makes you sacrifice with all your 10 kids? And I don't feel like that's really happening. Like, I don't feel like they understand us, or they're trying to understand us. And everybody's, accompaniment and the synodal way and all this, that's all the rage right now, except for the Latin Mass community, right? Like, nobody's trying to accompany us. So
Do you think, this slightly off topic, but I'll take the detour. Do you think this whole synodal thing's kind of a smoke and mirror thing? Because think about
sure.
all the things he's changed. The Traditionis, Custodes, and the subsequent documents, changing the catechism on the death penalty and fiducia supplicans.
Yeah.
Where is, like, there was nothing synodal about any of those decisions.
Yeah,
Like,
they kind of were
they were
railroaded in, weren't they?
data from the top.
Yeah. They were kind of just railroaded.
Yeah.
Like, here we go. This is a new change. We're doing this. Yeah, it's definitely it's a ruse, it seems. It feels like, we're listening to the people. We're just doing what the people want. But the church is not a democracy, right? Like, it's not a democracy. We don't get to just change things because the people want it. That's not how the church has ever operated. And Eric Sammons actually had a really good article today in Crisis about that, about how we shouldn't appease people who have left the church, because we can't just go change the faith just because I don't feel welcomed or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that article too, and
That was a good article.
That article, it's true that some people claim to not like the church because they're not welcoming to LGBT, the role of women, all this garbage. But it's not like if the church changes on that or makes compromises, they're going to come back. They won't.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah, like,
they just want to feel better about their choices, right? They just want to be affirmed in the choices that they're making, right?
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yeah, they're not going to come back. I remember I talked to an Irish guy. I was on a walk by the river. I talked to an Irish guy. And the topic changed to faith, and it's like, oh yeah, Pope Francis almost brought me back to church, But
but often for the wrong reason, I'm sure.
Yeah. So my next question is, how did you come to write the article? Did Eric contact you, or?
No, one morning we were home, the kids were doing work, and because I homeschool, and I just was like, I just wanted, our leaders to know have an understanding of our conviction and the great sacrifices that we've made for this liturgy. I just wanted that story to be told because I wasn't the only mom. We weren't the only parents doing this, like you said, with your friends and the 10 kids who drive 3 hours one way, you said.
Yeah.
We're not the only ones doing this. And so they don't seem to know the great effort that we're going to get to this liturgy. And so I just wanted the story of all these families to be told. And so I literally just got the computer and pounded it out, and it didn't take me very long. And then I took a chance and sent it, and he published it. So yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm a huge fan of Eric. He does a lot of good. I've had him on my channel actually. I don't know
Oh,
if you saw.
cool. Yeah, I always like what he has to say. He's very measured and very balanced, and he's good.
Yeah, and yeah, because there's a lot of people who we'll call them the traditionalists who are over the top, kind of always hysterical. I find he's the very sober minded.
Yeah, and he usually waits a few days on any hot topic that comes up. I appreciate that about him. He doesn't speak too quickly. He probably takes some time and thinks about it.
Okay, so I guess my next question was kind of answered already, and it was like, where do you go from here? And it sounds
Yeah.
like you're going to go to one. Are you going to go to the convent or?
No, it's the one in Dripping Springs, which is about an hour south of us. That's what we'll do for now. We all options are on the table for us. We are actually discerning, what does this look like, because what we really desire for our kids and our family is liturgical stability. And we want a parish life. We want more than just driving an hour every Sunday, right? We want to have a parish life with tradition incorporated into that, because when you find the Latin Mass, you don't only find a beautiful liturgy, you also find traditional Catholic piety and traditional Catholic devotions and all those kinds of things. And a lot of times you can't find those kinds of things at a Novus Ordo parish. And so we really do desire all of it. And so what does that look for our family? I don't know. In the short term, it looks like driving an hour to go to the Dripping Springs location. In the long term, does that mean that we move? Does that mean we drive even further to a different parish? I don't know. I don't know what that means, because we don't have the FSSP here in our diocese, even though for years many people have asked for our bishop to invite them. That's not something that was ever done here. So we don't have that option here. And, the closest FSSP parishes are in Fort Worth, Dallas, and I think there's one in Houston. But that's, 2 or 3 hours away, like your friends that load up in the van. So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like long term for us, but we're definitely praying about it and considering, what we might do in the future.
Well, I was talking to my friend, perhaps you know him, Catholic apologist William Albrecht, and okay, I don't know if I want to. I'll tell you after, because
Okay.
I don't want to
Yeah.
say where he's from,
Yeah.
just in case, even though some people might
Yeah.
know. But like okay, I can't bring up that city now, but so, oh no, but
The internet is forever, right?
yeah. So, and yeah, no, because I think with Traditionis Custodes, I actually wrote an article about like I think I'd posted on Twitter. I don't know if you had read it.
Was it about the FSSP and what your suspicions were about?
Yeah, like
I
about
like that article. That was a good one.
yeah, thank you. About like the primary target of the like the Traditionis Custodes and the subsequent documents.
Right.
It's essentially aimed at the
diocesan
priests who are doing it.
Yeah.
And once they finally eradicate those, I think then again, there's a few things that they might do, but then with the only masses being the former Ecclesia Dei groups, Institute, Fraternity, a couple other groups, they're So I think things like the Fraternity of St. Peter are safer. They're
For
safer
now.
than,
Yeah.
yeah, for now. Safer
Yeah.
for now. I don't think any
Yeah.
Latin mass is safe
Yeah,
now.
nothing, I don't think anything's out of the question long term. But like me and my husband are addressing it. Well, we don't have kids tomorrow. We have kids today. And so in the near future, my our youngest is 9 months old, our oldest is 14. And so we're making decisions based on that. You know, my oldest has 4 years until she's 18, and so that's 4 years under our care. And so those are really important years. And if we could give her a traditional parish for those last 4 years, if we can, we will. Why wouldn't we give that to her? And maybe in a couple years they start targeting those other parishes. That's fine, but at least I've given my children all I can now. You know.
Like, do you have like, does your husband have the kind of job where you guys can relocate or?
Yeah, somewhat. He works from home, so there's some flexibility. Obviously, he can't be too far from the office if he has to, drive in for the day or whatever. And so, but yeah, no, it's definitely not out of the question that we might, consider a move for all of this, because we just really do desire that liturgical stability, and all that comes with the liturgy. This isn't just about the mass for us. This is about preserving the tradition of our faith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's amazing talking to like families at the like Latin mass that have like 10 kids and the kids all go to church, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and
yeah.
that was for my husband, he that was really the thing that kind of like crossed him over to being willing to commit to the TLM, right? Like at first he was like, "Well, no, we'll just stick it out and we'll try and change our parish where we are." But then he ran across some statistics about the differences in children who are raised in the Novus Ordo and in the Latin Mass, and like statistically, he's a numbers guy. Statistically, your kids have a better chance of staying Catholic if they're raised in a traditional community with the traditional Latin Mass. And so for him, he was like, okay, well, if by giving them this liturgy and this context is giving my children the best chance to stay Catholic, then why wouldn't I do that? You're increasing your odds. We know nothing's for sure. Sure, one of them might reject the faith one day, but we're doing all that we can as parents to set them up for success with the best odds possible, and so why wouldn't we do that, if we could, you know
Yeah, no, like my family was like growing up. I I just have one sister. That's all. Small
Mhm.
family, and my mom was a Catholic. My dad didn't come. Yeah, he stopped. He came with us to church as a kid, but stopped going when we were like 12 or around
Mhm.
then. And yeah, no, my sister has fallen away, and
Yeah, so that's about a 50-50 chance, right?
yeah,
I'm not taking
and
those out. I have similar in my family. My brother has fallen away from the faith. So yeah, it's tragic when that happens. Yeah, so so I only have one brother and you only have one sister, and so that's 50-50, right? Okay, you
yeah,
translate that into a larger family, like say for your friends with the 10 kids, that's 5 children that leave the faith, right? I'm not taking those odds.
yeah, like that, like the odds of like um your kid becoming a priest or a nun are highly
Yeah.
increased in the Latin mass and
Yeah, yeah, the odds
community.
all for everything are just increased exponentially, and so why wouldn't we try and do that, by their fruit you will know them. And so all day I'll go with it. Yeah, so we're definitely committed to making this liturgy part of our life, and making the sacrifices that are necessary, because honestly I feel like if you look at it from a bird's eye view, I feel like this is kind of a chastisement, the and at the time, sure, that maybe maybe people were complacent or taking the mass for taking the mass for granted and not fully appreciating what they had, and so they let it go with ease. And so now that our generation is rediscovering the Latin mass, we're like, what did you do? What did you do to this mass? Why did you put it in the closet and bury it? And so now I feel like to get it back, we're going to have to sacrifice greatly, our generation.
do, do your children prefer the Latin Mass over the English?
At first they were like, well, this one's longer and I don't understand it. But over time, yes, they prefer it. My son's an altar server. And so it created in him a great reverence for the liturgy and for the Eucharist. And same for my daughter. So, or my older two, because the younger three are still so little. But yeah, no, they definitely prefer the Latin Mass. Yeah, they prefer it, and they definitely are just as committed as we are to preserving the Latin Mass, because it's just, especially from a child's point of view, you can definitely see the differences in the two liturgies, because we have gone back to the Novus Ordo for, like, first communions or confirmations and
Or
those kinds of
weddings or
things.
whatever?
And
Yeah.
the observations they make are, from the mouths of babes. I mean, you don't even have to tell them anything. They see
And
the difference.
for the people who hate who hate the Latin Mass and the Curia, people like Cardinal Roche and, let's be honest, Pope Francis.
Yeah, he
The,
seems
the,
to.
a thing that drives them nuts is how the youth like the Latin Mass. It's not the old people who are afraid of change.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if you know who Father Thomas Reese is.
Yeah.
This insufferable stain on the American church. Um, he says young people shouldn't be allowed to attend that mass. It's like,
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like communist China.
that sounds like clericalism.
Yeah, and also that. But in China, they don't let, 18 and under go to church. Only if you're, an adult can you go to church in China. I'm sorry, but no thank you, communism.
well, you know how the Vatican's all friendly with China now,
Yeah,
so
it's
maybe
unfortunate.
yeah.
Mhm.
So what do you now, branching out to a more broad topic, what do you think of Pope Francis and his papacy?
Pope Francis, he's definitely a product of his time. I don't really know what to make of him. I mean, he's just a lot. Um, but we have to put this into a greater context. He didn't just fall off the turnip truck, right? Like, this isn't out of the blue. This has been a long time coming. Um, the heresy of modernism has been growing for some time now, and now it seems to be um, the water we swim in, really, the air we breathe. It's all around us, and so it's definitely, and I think most Catholics who fall into modernist tendencies don't even realize that some of the things that they believe in are actually heresies and are not the faith. Because it's so intermingled nowadays that you have to really look for it to and know what you're looking for to see it. And so I don't think that there's malice on most people that are going along with all of this. They just don't know any better. But for people like our leaders, they should know better. They should make it their job to know better. And so it's really troubling to see it coming from, the highest places in our church. It's really sad. And my husband says it, he has a good way of putting it, in marriage, you love your spouse. You don't always like your spouse, but you love them. You will their good, right? For Pope Francis, I'd probably say the same. I love him. I pray for him daily. I don't always like what he does, but I do will his good, and I hope for his conversion.
Yeah, no, it kind of like, I've got a theory. I'll get you to comment on it. Uh with John Paul II and Pope Benedict, the church kind of caught a second wind after Vatican II.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I could see that we were on the long road to recovery, the long road.
The long road, yeah.
Um, because people debate, can you do a hermeneutic of continuity, yes or no? That's been debated, but you have to give Benedict credit. He tried his darndest to do it.
Yeah,
And then Francis completely tore up that script.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I don't think that the bishops were helping Benedict either, because I think his mutual enrichment project that he set out to do with Summorum Pontificum, it was a noble effort, like, let the two rights flourish and see what happens in 100 years. Will we end up with one right that joins the both of them? Will one right overcome the other? Like, I think that was a good way kind of see what would happen. But the bishops didn't let it flourish, right? They didn't, even though Summorum Pontificum opened the gate, opened the door to allow the liturgy to be celebrated more freely. I didn't see that. I mean, it did happen, sure. The growth was exponential, but I know back in 2020, there was an effort in our diocese of, because most of the families live in North Austin. And so we were trying to get the Mass in North Austin. Could we have one a little closer? Like, we're all up here in this, um, have another location, keep the one at St. Mary's, but could we have one also here? And the diocese was not open to that. And we kept pointing to Summorum Pontificum, but what about Summorum Pontificum? Benedict says that we have to, the church said that you have to do this if we ask you. And it just was never, it was always and always a reason.
John Coloraffi is a top apologist on issues like the papacy. I don't know if you're familiar with his work.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't heard of his name. Thanks so much. There's so many of us that are having to wrestle with this.
Here's some more comments. Excellent article in Crisis, Amanda. Thank you for sharing. Our small community has given FSSP 2. That's the same in our church. Like, we're getting like more vocations than the rest of the diocese, it seems.
Yeah, and that's not nothing. And I'm just floored that I just don't understand why that would be. I mean, you have to assume malice, right? Because, like, why would you stifle that? Why would you suppress that if it's growing? Why would you? I mean, the only thing you can, there's only two possibilities, like malice or what's the other word? Just not knowing what you're doing, ignorance.
I guess ignorance, yeah.
Yeah, what are we supposed to assume?
Is it possible that Pope Francis is under duress by the stonecutters in the Vatican and is being forced to make these changes to suit that agenda? So by stonecutters, he's obviously referring to Freemasons, I'm guessing.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's certainly not out of the question. Kai Stosh says, is the Latin Mass the cause of the retention rate for Catholic kids, or is it correlation that makes this appearance? Couldn't we expect committed Catholics to congregate in the TLM communities?
Yeah, that's always the argument, right? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it because you come from a really strong family that believes in the faith, or is it the liturgy? I don't know. I know the amount of peace and fruit and goodness that has come from going to this liturgy. And so I don't know. There has to be a correlation there.
I've kept like you talked about the peace and like the impression you first got. If you go back on this channel, like I've kept a diary. You can see my diaries. I've kept a daily diary for 15 years.
Wow.
And I remember in 2012, the summer of 2012, the first time I went to a Latin Mass, and I just recorded that. It just blew me away. I came on here and read it on the 10-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And that's why, apart from some exception, I've generally gone to it these last 12 years, because I found the Latin Mass in my hometown of Edmonton in July of 2012. Then the next month I moved 3 hours south to the city I'm currently in, Calgary, and it took a couple months, but I found the Latin Mass here, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any. Before becoming Catholic at 25, you told me the Mass was like stepping into a different dimension. I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's. Thank you, Mary. Even better, I'm in Georgetown. Where's Georgetown?
It's in North Austin. It's yeah.
Okay.
He's a part of our community.
Oh, hello, Joseph. Okay. Now it says for something completely new. It says on your Twitter account, homeschooling mom of 5 who loves to read. Hashtag
Mhm.
read good books.
Yes.
What are some of the books you like to read, and what are your
Um,
favorites?
yeah, the more learning all of the whys and the stuff. Sometimes some people that disturbs their peace. For me, it brings me a lot of peace to kind of give a context to all of this, right? Where is all this stuff coming from? And so I've really enjoyed reading about all of these things. I would say the most important books to read now as a Catholic would probably be, there's a few I would recommend. I, if you're not much of a reader, but there's a really short one called The Binding Force of Tradition by Father Ripperger. And it really is very good about what is tradition and what place should it hold in our faith. And it's probably something most have never even heard of. But it's very good. And it's only about 60 pages. So it's very good. And it's very important to understand why we care about tradition so much. I would say the two books by Bishop Schneider, The Springtime That Never Came and Christus Vincit, those are also important books. But I would say the most important book that Catholics should read right now would be Deadly Indifference by Eric Sammons. I really feel like that gets to the heart of the matter of where the differences are, and why there seems to be two worldviews in the church right now. And where is this conflict coming from? I really feel like he gets to the heart of the matter of it in that book. So
Yeah, and like that book, it kind of broke my heart. Just thinking of that book, and of course the Muslims just started Ramadan, and all these bishops are saying, "Oh, I wish the Muslim community a happy Ramadan," and all
mhm.
this stuff. And you probably saw Cardinal Dolan. It's like, well, it's like their Lent, they're trying to be whole. And I'm like, why do you do? Just don't say anything.
Yeah. I know, you're here to promote our faith. I can't, I always, whenever those things happen, I always think about the early Christian martyrs, right? They refused a pinch of incense to save their life because they knew that was idolatry. And now we're like falling over ourselves to give the pinch of incense to other faiths. It's really hard to believe that we're here.
I think it's more than a pinch if you ask me,
Yes.
but
Yes, we're giving way more than a pinch of incense. That is fair.
well, well, and keep in mind, like back then, back in the early church, it was give the pinch of incense or lose your head. And
Right, yeah.
they'd say,
Yeah, if we're doing it for much less, just
yeah,
to be comfortable and,
take
be
my
nice.
head, try to get it all in one swing. That's what I would say.
I know.
And yeah, no, I had Eric Sammons on my. I think I told you I had him on my channel to talk
Yeah,
about that book. And yeah, no, that
it's an
book,
important book, I think.
yeah, it talks about the dialogue which goes nowhere, and
Yeah,
it's meant to be eternal dialogue with no fruit
yeah,
except completely destroying the gospel.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure I'll be able to recommend The Once and Future Roman White with Peter Kwasniewski. That's my next read. I'm eager to read that because I think it incorporates tradition and all the topics that I love into one book. So I'm looking forward to reading that one next.
Wow, you just made my one of my friends is watching, and he told me about that book.
Yeah,
It's the same guy who I told you about, at whose barbecue I met the guy from who
yeah,
drives 3 hours. It was him who was hosting it. He was telling me about this one. I just got Father, like it came today, Father Maudsley's book.
Ooh, he's
Part
good.
two.
He's good.
Okay.
Which book did you get?
If you believe
Oh, yeah.
Moses Part 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Those look good. Those are on my list. I've got a list so long.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah.
Do you read any novels at all?
I'm not really a novel reader. I've
No.
tried. I mean, the best I can do, I read Windswept House by Malachi Martin, but that's not really, I mean, it's fact fiction. So I don't know. I'm not really a novel reader. I did read, oh gosh, what is it called? Uh, I did read some novels. I can't think of the author. He's a Catholic author and he writes fiction. Michael O'Brien. I read
No.
one of his. that was really good. I can't remember the name. Father Elijah. That was really good. That was
Oh,
a good book. So if it's something like that, I would read that, But again, it incorporates the faith and theology and all those kinds of things. Those are the kind of books I like to read. So
well, yeah, like I've got a policy that because I read between 40 and 50 books a year, I have a policy that every fifth book has to be a novel,
oh, that's a good policy.
or else I will read no novels. Yeah, I'm currently
Yeah.
reading the old James Bond novels, the ones that the movies are based off.
Kind of like a
Those
palate
books,
cleanser.
those books are they're problematic in some ways. I mean, like I'm not a fan of feminism, but there's some misogyny in those books that makes like I make fun of feminism, and that kind of
Yeah.
misogyny makes me uncomfortable. And in one
Yeah.
book, there's a lot of black people. They use the N word,
Oh yeah.
But like, if you go like some good books, I think your kids, like you said, your oldest daughter's 14, 15, around that age. Like she's getting to the age where like a good novel to read would like probably be something by like the Bronte sisters, or a book like Pride and Prejudice. That's a good book, because back then, like those people had such good morals, like like compared to like I'm sure there's a lot of bad people back there, but those people
Yeah.
are good books,
Yeah.
solid stuff. And I think you saw on Twitter I
Oh
was
yeah, that
reading
looks good.
a polemic against Martin Luther. My it's kind of like personal for me. Like my my dad's a Lutheran, non-practicing, but both of his parents, so my grandparents, they were both church-going Lutherans to the day they died. They weren't
Yeah.
Catholic. It's my mom's family that's Catholic, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
I read a book about Martin Luther. It was called Luther, and it was by the one by Tan. That was an interesting book. He's an interesting figure.
yeah, um, yeah. A tragic figure. I mean,
Yeah, truly tragic.
yeah, just like I think he just. I mean, I might get heck for saying this. I did think he started with good intentions. But
Yeah.
he quickly got caught up in something, and of course
Yeah.
he was quite the sinner too.
Yeah. My theory about Martin Luther is that, it made mention in that book that when he was growing up, he was punished a lot corporally. So he was beaten by his parents and his teachers, and he wasn't always told why. And so my theory about him is that he grew up and never had this impression as a child that he could never do anything right. And so he grew up, and his scrupulosity was so much to bear that he just finally had to like just release that. And his theology indicates that he finally just had to let go of what you do doesn't matter, because that
Yeah,
was kind of what he was told as a child. What you do doesn't matter. You will always be wrong, right? And so yeah, I think Martin Luther is just a tragic figure recovering from his broken childhood. That's kind of my theory about him. So who knows what really happened?
yeah. I think I know the book you're talking about.
The Truth About Luther, I think, is what
From
it's called or
Pan,
something.
like it's got a
Yeah.
very unflattering picture of him on the front. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, are you an E. Michael Jones fan?
I'm familiar with him. I don't know too much about him. I know he's controversial, but I know some of his hot takes.
Yeah, no, like his book on the Jews is like his book on the Holocaust, the narrative.
uh,
His book on the Jews. That, oh man, that book is so long. It's not even
oh,
his longest.
wow.
It's over 1,000 pages, but
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Yeah.
I eventually want to read all of his books. The Bond series. James Bond is a Catholic. Are you sure he's a Catholic? I haven't come across that in the books. I've
Maybe
only
not a
read.
practicing Catholic.
Yeah, certainly not the James Bond from the books either.
Yeah.
He's yeah. Well, if you got any final words for all the people out there, all the Latin Massers
Yeah.
watching and who will watch it later?
I would say just, you know, I would say this mass is worth sacrificing for. If you're curious, if you haven't gone yet, I would say go for 4 to 6 weeks and then see what happens. You won't be disappointed. And I would say if you're going and you're not sure if you can maintain the commitment, even when more obstacles are placed in your way, I would say go. I think we will be richly blessed if we continue to be devoted to this mass and sacrifice greatly for it, because there's something about this mass that is transformative, that is beautiful, and that is worth preserving. And so we need to fight for it. We need to make the effort and the sacrifice to support it and to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important, get your rosary and pray
Yeah,
for.
pray. Yes, pray definitely. Watch Mass of the Ages episode 3 tomorrow. I'm excited.
Oh, I haven't watched any of those.
Oh my gosh,
Like
Alan, you have to. You have
oh,
to go watch them. They're
have
so
you
good.
seen have you seen Cabrini yet?
I have not seen it yet. No. I think I will. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding it, but I think I want to make up my own mind about it, see what it's about. And
Yeah,
it makes me want to read a book about her, learn more about
yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah. No, it does look good. I hope they do a good job. I've heard great things. I've heard horrible things. I've heard everything in between. So
Yeah.
I guess she was an amazing woman. So
If nothing else, it'll pique people's interest and maybe they'll learn more about her. Hopefully that could be a good fruit from it. I know.
yeah, praise God. And I'm asking everyone who's watching just to pray the rosary or pray something else for the people out there who have lost their mass, who lost their Latin mass.
Yeah.
Um, because as you know, there's people that are traveling 1, 2, 3 hours, people with lots of kids,
Yeah.
and they're it's amazing. That shows devotion. Like you
Yeah.
said in your article, the whole Sunday was like a pilgrimage to the most important
Yeah.
act of worship all week.
Right. And certainly, there's enough sacrilegious things going on out there at Mass that we need to make reparation for it. So, being devoted to this liturgy through great cost and sacrifice, wouldn't that be a great act of reparation for all the sacrilege that happens? Sure, I think it's worth it.
Just a quick question: have you ever been to Europe?
I did. I actually went to World Youth Day in '96 when it was in Paris with
Oh
John Paul
wow!
II. Yeah.
Oh, wow!
Uh-huh.
Well, ironic. My question was going to be: did you find the liturgy more reverent there than Novus Ordo's there?
I don't remember. I was only 15, and it was a lot to take in. So I don't even remember. I
In
don't even remember.
in 2006, technically it was the second time I was in Europe, but the first time I was 6 months old.
Yeah.
I think my parents planned it before I came along, and then I came along. But in 2006, the first time I went that I remember, and we stayed in Paris for 10 days, and there was 2 Sundays, so we went to mass at Notre Dame, and at that time the Da Vinci Code was popular, so we went to Saint Sulpice,
Uh-huh.
and then I remember, since in France the church attendance rates are so low, that okay, the mass is over. I'm Canadian, right? So I
Yeah.
speak French. So I'm talking to the fellow Catholics in mass, and they were all American tourists, American Catholic tourists.
How
And so
funny. So not French people weren't even there going to Mass. That's funny.
yeah,
Sad. Sad funny.
yeah, that is really sad.
That's really too bad.
I know there's some devout French Catholics out there, but they're
Yeah,
a minority.
for
But,
sure.
do, do you have any more articles coming up, or was this just
I
like a
have
one?
one that I'm thinking about writing that I haven't written yet. And I have a title for it, and I don't know if it'll get published, but dressing up in a casual culture is kind of like, I've made a lot of observations lately how casual our culture has gotten. And so I might write an article about why I started wearing dresses and what that and where that came from and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of mulling around in my head.
You plan on starting a YouTube channel, a blog, or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'll do that. It'll be too much of a distraction. I've got too many kids and things to do for that. But a creative outlet is nice to have. I really like reading my books that I read, and I really like discussing my books. So maybe next time I read a book, I'll come back on and we can visit about a book.
Yeah, I love this stream. You're welcome on anytime. Just
Yeah.
send me a message. I want to talk about X, Y, and Z, and we'll
Yeah.
make it happen. And like, we're in a fairly close time zone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm Mountain Time. You're, I think, an hour off. But I mean, it's very annoying trying to like people 2 time zones over. That's actually
That gets complicated.
yeah, but let alone, like, I had a girl on from Austria to talk about the pro-life movement in Europe. We had to do that one on a Saturday because you just can't do that during the week.
That's too good. Yeah, that'd be too difficult.
All right, so I guess we will call this a night. I've got the link down in the descriptions for anyone who wants to read the Crisis Magazine article that prompted this discussion. I recommend you go read it. It's a great article. And pray for the people that have lost their mass, and pray that one day it will be a lot more widespread and more Catholics,
a lot more widely available.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to kill the stream, and God bless.
Thanks.